I decided to take my wife's last name, and it was the best decision I've ever made. Hi, my name is Andy Golder. You might know me as that guy on BuzzFeed who likes Game of Thrones way too much. But 2 years ago, my name wasn't Andy Golder, it was Andy Neuenschwander. I got married in 2016, and I decided to take my wife's last name. We had a lot of reasons for this decision, including, but not limited to, wanting to have the same last name, wanting my wife to keep the name that she had started her career with, and me wanting to get rid of the 14-letter monstrosity that I had lived most of my life with. After much deliberation and a detailed pro-con list, we decided that the best idea was for me to become a Golder. Here's what I've learned in the first 2 years of having a shiny new last name. Number 1, some people do not know how to respond. The first person we told about the decision for me to take my wife's last name was actually a server at a restaurant. We were celebrating our engagement, and when she took my credit card, she made a joke about how my wife must really not be looking forward to taking my crazy last name. When we told her that I was actually taking my wife's last name, she laughed, thinking that we were joking about it. Then she kind of looked confused for a moment, and then she just sort of ran away and ran the card. Number 2, people seem to think of it as a last resort. People always say things like, oh, I have friends who just combine their last names together. Have you guys ever thought of doing that? But to me, why does a completely new, made-up name, make more sense than one that already has a history and current familial ties and things like that? How is both of us losing our last names preferable to a man taking his wife's last name? Also, Neuengold sounds kind of dumb, and Goldschwander sounds like a liqueur with gold flakes in it that I may or may not have thrown up in college. And there's literally not enough time in the world for me to introduce myself as Andy Neuenschwander Golder if we hyphenated it. Number 3. Changing your name is actually really hard. You have to go to both the Social Security office and the DMV, which are pretty much the 2 worst places in the world. And then, even after you've done that part and your name is legally changed, then you have to change your last name on everything you've ever signed up for in the history of the internet. A lot of places require a certified copy of your marriage certificate, which costs money and takes time, so it's a huge pain. To this day, I still haven't gotten around to changing my PayPal. Number 4, women usually love the idea. My wife's group text with her bridesmaids had a lot of heart emojis and stuff in it. My mom had always kept her birth name, so she was, of course, in approval. A female friend of mine even gave me her incredibly helpful checklist of things to do after she took her husband's last name. But, of course, I still forgot a bunch of stuff. Number 5, some men are definitely weirded out by it. Generally, men were supportive as well, but one of my friends, when I pressed him about it, he admitted that he, and I quote, would never. When my wife informed her uncle of the change, he asked if that was even legal. Number 6, the system really isn't set up for men. It was ultimately just as easy for me to get my name changed as it would be for a woman, but there are these little things along the way that kind of remind you how rare what you're doing really is. For example, the most popular name change system is called MissNowMisses.com. Listen, I'm not mad, and I'm sure it's a great service, but it was just kind of funny to me. You don't really realize how automatic the thinking is around name changing until you actually do it. We hired a photo booth company for our wedding, like everybody else in the last 10 years, and they provided us with this really nice scrapbook of everybody's photo booth photos at the end. And on one of the pages, they had written the phrase, he stole my heart, so I stole his last name. Of course, I don't fault the owners, they were wonderful, but it just kind of shows how automatic the thinking is. Number 7, I feel like I have to explain myself a lot. Every time I'm talking to some poor customer service person and I have to tell them that I changed my name, a simple, I got married never seems to suffice. Instead, it turns into me going on this long thing like, oh, I got married and I had this really long last name and, I had a and blah, 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 and it just turns into this whole thing. Number 8, a lot of people probably just assume that my wife changed her last name. My wife realized this shortly after we made the change, and she said, people are probably just gonna think that you were always a Golder and that I took your last name. She's probably right. In a 2015 study, over 70% of women who married men took their husband's last name. About 20% chose to keep their own last name. The other 10% chose a third option, which means anything from combining a last name to even taking their husband's last name but using their own last name professionally. More recently though, a 2017 UK study showed that 1 in 10 recently married British men decided to take their wife's last name. Number 9, it was all totally worth it. Having my wife's last name, a name that we both love, was worth all of the many, many forms that I filled out. So whether you're keeping your own name, combining it, changing it to something else, just do your thing. It'll be the perfect choice for you. So I wrote an article for BuzzFeed about taking my wife's last name and the whole process of it, and the response I got was fairly mixed. A lot of the response was really positive. I got a lot of tweets from people saying that they had also taken their wife's last name. Some of the responses have been negative too, for sure. You know, I think a lot of people have a really traditional idea of this, and that's probably not going to go away. It's a little sad sometimes when people are just really fundamentally opposed to this, because I don't see why it's such a big deal. If it makes people happy and it's not bothering you, then, you know, why be a dick about it? Masculinity can be so fragile, you know what I mean? And it just sucks because it limits you so much. If you're so stuck in it that something as simple as changing your last name is like this horrible thing that takes away your manhood, then like, I mean, that just sucks for you. What matters is that you love this person, and you know, that's it. That's all that matters.